Well, good evening and welcome to the Arbor Hills Nature Preserve in Plano, Texas. Tonight's exercise is a field test of the BRINYTE PT16A tack light. I want to thank BRINYTE for sending me the light and making the review possible. Well, what do we have here? 3000 lumen tack light. Almost 53,000 peak candela. If you were to take those numbers and plot them on a 2D grid, when you plotted that point, you would find that it was one point in a very large cluster. So I think one of the big issues for tonight's testing will be, does the light offer any features or output characteristics that would significantly differentiate it from all the other dots in that cluster. In terms of construction, very good, just like the previous BRINYTE product I field tested. I like the grip, knurling, texturing here, balancing the hand. You'll notice dual tail cap switches, on-off momentary, output levels, side switch, a very aggressive strike bezel, and this will affect the appearance of the periphery of the spill. In terms of grip, of course it supports overhand, then underhand. If you like holding the light like this, particularly when operating with a pistol, then you can really lock this in good. You don't even have to shift your thumb, just some slight forward pressure will give you that brief flash of turbo, then rotate your thumb and you can get quick strobe. The only downside being that if you've got this locked in really tight, you're in a stressful, highly kinetic situation. A inadvertent flex in the grip might cause inadvertent action in the light. So just something to think about. Output levels are low, medium, high, turbo, strobe, SOS. In terms of operating with the switches, if you use the tail cap switches, this is a turbo first light. Always turns on in turbo. Use this switch to cycle through the remaining basic modes. With tail cap switch operation, you have off to turbo, off to strobe, on to strobe, no on to turbo. The side switch has memory. You have off to low, on to strobe, but no on to turbo. Once you're in strobe, you can progress from there to SOS. Electronic lockout for the side switch, mechanical or twist for the tail cap. It is possible to lock out the tail cap and use the side switch, and there is a 1-minute auto lockout for the side switch. But enough of me babbling on. I know you're here for the field test. I know you want to see the beam shots. Those beam shots may be a deciding factor in your final decision. So, let's get right to it. At the bridge where I normally do output level test in low, looking out over the creek, one up into medium, high, good 35, 38 yards line of sight, and then everyone's favorite turbo. First practical test of the evening, close proximity search. This is the playground. I normally do this in the context of searching for something that your children dropped. You have to come search for it later. Let's put it in more of a TAC context. Two officers chasing a suspect from this direction. The suspect comes through here. They have a suspicion that he tossed something off to the side, so one officer takes off after the suspect, other has to search for it. I typically think about this in the 5 to 7, maybe 10-yard range. This is low, which is not bad given the candela of the output, but it's still not quite there, especially with all the surrounding light pollution. I would just want something a bit higher for this task. Now, medium, for sure. In fact, you could argue inside of 10 yards it may be overkill. And as we come over to this direction, looking across the playground for something, it's great. This is the basic path following test. Just what's the lowest output level to follow a groomed path. With all the rain that we've had, this ground is really chewed up. So this is a really good test right now. Can I make it through here without tripping or getting a mechanical injury? I've got pretty decent downrange, more than enough to see the slope of the terrain, these ridges that have been formed by rain wash, areas that I'm going to get in trouble. You might be able to see the effect of the strike bezel on the spill. I think the good news is even though the spill isn't that great, the candela is high enough that I've got excellent downrange. I'm just going to have to work a bit side to side and then make sure I come down here and constantly check out what's in front of me. At least I shouldn't have to go up into high. That would have been a real bummer because there's no easy way to toggle back and forth between medium and high. I'd have to go up to high and then cycle all the way back around to medium. This is a medium high test, currently in medium, looking out over another creek, about 35, 38 yards line of sight. But this is a much more wide open area. We're exposed to all the light pollution from the surrounding city. And as I move to the right, we'll find out that it's very bright because we have low clouds and we're getting partial reflections of that light off the clouds, so it's very much like a bright moonlit night and then some. Continuing to move off to the right, path curves off to the right, keep going. I kind of want to find out where the edge is between when I would switch from medium to high. So we get out right about in here does it for me. That's about 75, 80 yards. That gap between these two trees, there's a tree in the middle, that's a good 100 yards. I would even have trouble doing detection. So go one up into high, and yeah, in bad conditions, I would say maybe 100 to 120 for doing detection and partial identification in high. This is a standalone test in high. From where I am, I'm looking back about a good 110, 115 yards and a very bright, wide open environment. This tends to confirm what I saw on the last test, and that is you could get good detection, partial identification high out to a good 120, 125. Darker night, probably longer than that. Let's go take a look at turbo. And turbo. That tree in the far distance is over 175 yards. I'm already feeling some heat in the around the pinky area of my hand. I'm using an overhand grip. Let me show you the side to side. You're already kind of starting to see the effect of that highly aggressive strike bezel on field of view. Now, if you're buying a thrower, it's all about throw. For a tack light, that balance between throw and field of view is often important, so that's something you might want to think about. Getting up pretty close to a minute, and there we saw some step down. From the manual, it's supposed to be about a minute before you hit that first step down, so that's right in line with what we would expect. Heat is remaining steady. Let's take it out to a good 2 and see if this seems like more of a steady state. Heat has remained constant, in fact, is even declining a bit, just slightly. Of course, I could do detection, not identification, all the way back to that far tree. Well, as we approach 2.5, that's looking very much like a steady state, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. So I have my headlamp in a low flood. I'm just headed along this trail on a nice warm evening. Going to go out here and hang out with the snakes and bobcats, see if I can make any new friends. I've got the PT16 off in my other hand. As I look over to the left, whoa, what's that? What's that? So that's how easy it is to get from off into strobe, how quickly things can happen. Of course, brief flash to turbo is equally easy. Okay, one more time through all the output levels, starting in low. You can see the effect of the aggressive strike bezel on the periphery of the beam. Let's move over here to my usual spot. Medium. High. Now it's getting pretty tough. Gonna move around through here. Okay. A good 55 yards line of sight, not nearly good as during the winter. And then there's everybody's favorite turbo. Back around to low, medium, high, and I'll finish off my summary here in high output as I just continue to go around. Evaluating any type of light is difficult. tac lights are no exception because you have to match so many things to your personal use cases, from UI all the way to output. In terms of comparing with everything else in that cluster I talked about in the opening, high and turbo, pretty much the same. In fact, at the high end, a bit less than a lot of other options. So I don't know what you think about the low end. For me personally, based on many, many years in private security, patrol, executive protection, volunteer work, citizens on patrol, just personally, I did not care for the output at the low end. It's almost like I want the low to be more of a moonlight, give me direct to moonlight from off, and then make the normal cycle low, medium, high turbo, and bump up low and high, low and medium considerably, high maybe just a little, but that's just my personal 2 cents, which may not even be worth a penny. It's not what I think, it's what you think. And on that happy note, I hope you saw everything you needed to make a decision. If not, you want to see more testing, leave a comment. I'll see what I can do. And as always, until the next review, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching the video.